The sun hung high over Erfurt on that fateful day in July of the year 1184, casting a warm golden hue over the bustling marketplace and the grand stone structures that dominated the town square. The air was thick with the scent of baked bread, roasting meats, and the heady aroma of spiced wine, as merchants and townsfolk alike prepared for what would be a momentous gathering of nobility. Tapestries adorned the walls of the town hall, their vibrant colors fluttering in the gentle breeze, and banners emblazoned with the sigils of influential lords and ladies swayed overhead, announcing the importance of the occasion. As the hour approached, the cobblestones echoed with the sound of hooves and wheels, heralding the arrival of noble carriages and their retinues. The lords of the Holy Roman Empire, clad in lavish garments, emerged from their gilded vehicles, their presence commanding respect and awe. Rich furs draped over shoulders, and jeweled brooches glinted in the sunlight, each piece a testimony to their wealth and power. The gathering was a calculated display, a symposium of alliances and treachery, for behind the veneer of camaraderie lay the simmering tensions of ambition and rivalry. At the center of the assembly stood Count Heinrich von Stolberg, a man of imposing stature and a reputation for cunning. He surveyed the gathered nobles with a hawk-like gaze, keenly aware of the shifting loyalties that defined his world. As he stepped forward, the crowd fell silent, all eyes upon him. "Noble lords and ladies," his voice boomed, resonating through the courtyard. "We convene here not merely to celebrate our kinship, but to forge the bonds that will steer the course of our future." A murmur rippled through the assembly, a mixture of agreement and skepticism. The political landscape of the Holy Roman Empire was fraught with peril, and the specter of conflict loomed ominously. The recent disputes over land and titles had ignited in the sweltering heat of July 1184. The sun hung high over the bustling town of Erfurt, casting golden rays upon the cobblestone streets. The sound of hooves clattering against stone echoed as nobles from across the realm arrived in grand procession, their splendid banners fluttering like the wings of vibrant birds. Each lord, adorned in richly embroidered tunics and cloaks of deep hues, was escorted by a retinue of knights and men-at-arms, the clinking of chainmail harmonizing with the distant murmur of the river Gera. At the heart of the town stood the imposing St. Mary's Cathedral, its towering spires reaching toward the heavens, a silent witness to the coming tumult of politics and power. Merchants and townsfolk, eager to catch a glimpse of the lords, crowded the marketplace, their faces painted with curiosity and awe. The scent of roasting meats and spiced wines wafted through the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of the summer soil beneath their feet. As twilight descended, casting a warm glow over the assembly, the nobles gathered within the cathedral's stone walls, their voices rising in fervent discussions. The air buzzed with the gravity of their purpose, a grand council to deliberate on alliances and governance, a crucial step in the fragile equilibrium of power that hung over the region like a storm cloud. Tension hung palpably as old grievances and rivalries simmered just below the surface. At the head of the assembly stood Duke Heinrich of Thuringia, his silver hair framing a weathered face marked by years of conflict and diplomacy. His sharp eyes surveyed the assembly, gauging the shifting loyalties among those present. To his right, Countess Adelheid of Hesse, known for her fierce intellect and unyielding spirit, sat poised, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the polished oak table. She had come to secure her own interests, determined to enhance her influence. "Let us not forget the plight of our people," Duke Heinrich began, his voice steady yet commanding, "for the strength of our alliances must serve not only our ambitions, but also the welfare of the realm. We face threats from without, and divisions within can only lead to ruin." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, yet not all were swayed. Lord Gerhard of Saxony, a man known for his ambition and cunning, leaned forward, his dark eyes glinting with ulterior motives. "And what of the lands to the north? The Swedes grow restless, and we cannot afford to expose our flanks while we bicker amongst ourselves." His words ignited a spark of discord, as noble lords began to raise their voices, each vying to assert their own visions for the future. Alliances forged in blood and battle threatened to unravel, and the delicate balance of power teetered precariously, with accusations slung like arrows, each word sharp enough to draw blood. In the ensuing chaos, a young squire, tasked with delivering messages, darted through the throng, pausing to catch his breath. He bore news from the borders, rumors of a gathering army, a coalition of discontented vassals who sought to exploit the divisions within the assembly. This news, if confirmed, could tilt the scales of power irreversibly. As the night deepened, the flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the faces of the assembled lords, revealing the growing unease. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the bustling market square of Erfurt, where the scent of fresh bread mingled with the sharp tang of spiced meats. Merchants loudly hawked their wares, their voices rising above the symphony of clattering hooves and the low murmur of townsfolk. Amidst this vibrant tableau, a more solemn gathering convened within the sturdy walls of the Augustinian monastery, its stone facade weathered, yet resolute, against the passage of time. Inside the cool stone chamber, candlelight flickered against the walls, illuminating the faces of the prominent townsfolk and clergy assembled for a purpose weighty with consequence. The air was thick with anticipation, as the Bishop of Erfurt, a man of considerable girth and even greater ambition, adjusted his heavy mitre, the gold embroidery glimmering in the dim light. He cleared his throat, a sound that echoed in the charged silence, drawing the gaze of all present. "My esteemed brethren," he began, his voice a deep rumble resonating with authority, "we stand at the precipice of a vital decision, the selection of the venue for the forthcoming council. This gathering shall shape the future of our faith and the governance of our land. We must choose wisely, lest our efforts be rendered moot by the folly of our choice." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. The stakes were high. The council was to address grievances that had festered like a wound within the church, touch upon the conflicts with the burgeoning powers of the nobility, and confront the rising tides of heresy that threatened to undermine the very foundation of Christendom. As the bishop spoke, the aging abbot of the nearby monastery interjected, his voice trembling yet firm. "We must not overlook the influence of the location itself. The council's venue must be a place of reverence and authority, imbued with the weight of our shared history." He gestured to the map unfurled upon the table, its edges frayed, the ink smudged in places, but still clear enough to mark the towns of Thuringia. "Magdeburg," suggested a young cleric, his voice confident yet brimming with trepidation. "It is a growing city, well situated along the waterways, and its cathedral stands as a testament to our faith." A ripple of dissent coursed through the room. The bishop's brow furrowed, his fingers drumming against the wooden table. "But it lacks the gravitas of our own Erfurt. Here we have the ancient walls of the St. Mary's Cathedral, a site steeped in history, where countless souls have sought solace and guidance. It is a place that can command respect, where our deliberations shall be heard." Voices rose and fell like the tide, each man vying to sway his peers. The tension thickened, and the candle flames flickered as if disturbed by the mounting discord. The abbot rose once more, his staff thumping against the stone floor, demanding silence. "We must remember our unity, for it is our strength. Let us not fracture over the choice of a site, but rather seek to find a consensus that reflects our collective spirit." His words hung in the air, stilling the tumult for a moment. The flickering light cast shadows that danced across the faces of the assembled, revealing the depths of their resolve and their fears. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the bishop raised his hand, the room falling silent once more. "Let us call for a vote then, and may God guide our decision. The weight of our choice shall echo through the annals of history, shaping the sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the bustling streets of Erfurt as townsfolk gathered for the momentous assembly at the newly constructed town hall. Eager faces, adorned with expressions of curiosity and determination, filled the square, their voices a jubilant crescendo that echoed against the sturdy stone walls of the building. This hall, a proud testament to the city's burgeoning power, had risen rapidly from the earth, its crumbling foundations scarcely concealed beneath the ornate facade that sparkled in the afternoon light. Within the hall, the air was thick with anticipation. Wood-paneled walls, hastily erected, bore the marks of hurried craftsmanship, yet they exuded an air of grandeur, decorated with vibrant tapestries that depicted the storied past of Erfurt. A dais at the far end of the chamber awaited the mayor, a rotund figure named Heinrich, whose bejeweled robes hinted at his status, yet belied the sweat glistening upon his brow. His advisors flanked him, their faces painted with equal parts pride and anxiety, for they knew the structure's integrity was as fragile as the alliances they hoped to forge that day. As the townspeople filled the chamber, the murmurs of excitement transformed into a symphony of voices, each one rising over the other in a spirited chorus. The scent of fresh timber, mingled with the aroma of baked bread and spiced meats wafting from stalls outside, a feast for the senses that belied the unease that lurked below the surface. Each creak of the floorboards drew wary glances, but the promise of unity and prosperity dulled their apprehensions. At that moment, a sudden shift in the atmosphere stirred the air. A tremor rumbled beneath the hall, scarcely perceptible at first, but growing in intensity. The mayor, having just taken his place to address the assembly, raised his hands to command silence. People of Erfurt, today we gather not just to celebrate our new home, but to forge our future. Let us unite under the banner of progress. His voice boomed, momentarily drowning out the unease. But as he spoke, the tremor transformed into a violent shudder, as if the very earth beneath the town hall had come alive in protest. The crowd gasped collectively, their faces shifting from rapture to alarm. The heavy timbers creaked ominously, and a series of sharp cracks echoed through the hall, like thunder rolling through the skies. Heinrich's voice faltered, and the onlookers drew back, fear etched across their faces. Then, with a cacophony that shattered the reverent silence, the upper floors groaned in agony, the hastily constructed beams yielding to the weight of the gathered assembly. A series of muffled thuds followed, as if the building itself were crying out. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the bustling streets of Erfurt on that warm August day in 1184. The air was thick with the mingling scents of roasting meats, freshly baked bread, and the sweet perfume of summer flowers. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the city prepared for a grand event that would echo through the annals of history. The lavish feast, hosted by the illustrious Margrave Hermann of Thuringia. In the heart of the city, the great hall of the Margrave's castle stood resplendent, its stone walls draped with rich tapestries depicting the triumphs of the Thuringian lords. Torches flickered as servants scurried about, bearing platters piled high with delicacies. The clang of dishes and the murmur of excited voices filled the air, creating a symphony of anticipation. Nobles from distant lands, adorned in vibrant silks and gleaming armor, gathered in small clusters, their laughter echoing against the vaulted ceilings. As the evening approached, the hall transformed into a spectacle of opulence. Long tables, covered with embroidered cloths, groaned under the weight of roasted swan, spiced venison, and pies bursting with fruits harvested from the nearby orchards. Goblets of fine wine, glistening like rubies in the torchlight, awaited the hands of guests eager to indulge. The atmosphere was electric, a blend of camaraderie and rivalry, as the lords and ladies exchanged pleasantries while glancing sidelong at their rivals. At the head of the table, Margrave Hermann presided, a man of formidable presence. His beard, flecked with gray, framed a face that bore the marks of both wisdom and the burdens of power. He raised his goblet, a gesture that stilled the room, drawing the attention of every noble and knight present. To our honored guests, may this feast nourish the bonds of friendship and fortify our resolve against the foes that threaten our lands. Cheers erupted, echoing through the hall, yet beneath the surface of merriment lay a current of tension. The Margrave's ambitions for greater power had drawn the ire of rival lords, and whispers of betrayal flitted through the hall like shadows. Old alliances were tested, and new ones formed, as glances passed between those who sought to curry favor with the Margrave. The first course was served, a procession of dishes that delighted the senses. A minstrel struck up a lively tune, the sound of lute and flute filling the air, urging feet to dance. Ladies twirled in their flowing gowns, while knights, emboldened by wine, boasted of their feats in battle. Yet amidst the revelry, a young knight named Ulrich observed with a hawk's gaze. He had come not merely to partake in the feast, but to secure his future. Rumors of a plot against the Margrave had reached his ears, and he sensed that the evening's merriment masked a deeper peril. As the main course was laid before them, an extravagant roast boar, its skin crackling and glistening, Ulrich's mind raced. He had seen the glances exchanged between Count Otto and Duke Heinrich, their eyes alight with conspiratorial fire. The weight of loyalty tugged at his heart, a bond forged in battle against common foes, yet the allure of power beckoned like a siren's song. With the feast reaching its zenith, laughter erupted once more, but Ulrich's brow furrowed. He knew the night was far from finished. As goblets clinked and voices rose in jubilation, the specter of treachery loomed large, casting a shadow over the lavish spread. The Margrave's fate hung in the balance, and Ulrich, torn between loyalty and ambition, braced for the storm that threatened to shatter the fragile peace of the evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the bustling city of Erfurt, the grand hall of the noble house of von Hohenberg came alive with the clamor of voices and the clinking of goblets. Tapestries depicting the rich history of the region, woven with threads of gold and silver, adorned the stone walls, their colors glowing in the flickering light of the hundreds of beeswax candles that lined the long wooden tables. The air was thick with the enticing aromas of roasted meats and spiced wines, a feast fit for the most prestigious of gatherings. Nobles, clad in rich silks and velvets, their garments a riot of deep reds, greens, and blues, mingled and laughed heartily, the echoes of their gaiety rising high into the vaulted ceilings. Lord Wilhelm von Hohenberg, the host for the evening, proudly surveyed the scene, a smile etched across his face as he raised his goblet in a toast to unity among the houses of Thuringia. His voice boomed across the hall, calling for more wine, more merriment, for the night was meant to celebrate the recent alliance forged through marriage and diplomacy. Yet beneath the revelry, an unseen tension loomed. The ancient stone structure, though grand, bore the weight of centuries, its foundations settling unevenly over time. The laughter and the heavy footfalls of the dancing nobles sent ripples through the very bones of the hall, and the echoes of joy were met with subtle, ominous creaks from the timber beams overhead. A heavy chandelier, adorned with glimmering crystals, swayed slightly, catching the light and casting fleeting rainbows across the merrymakers. As the guests indulged in their feast, filling their plates with succulent roasted fowl and rich stews, the atmosphere shifted ever so faintly. The laughter grew louder, the music more boisterous, drowning out the quiet whispers of unease that began to circulate amongst the more perceptive attendees. Lady Gertrude, a matron of considerable age and wisdom, glanced upwards, her brow furrowing as a larger-than-usual thud reverberated through the hall. She nudged her neighbor, Count Albrecht, a man of stout disposition and a glutton for food, who waved her off with a dismissive hand, too engrossed in the juicy leg of lamb before him. But the hall's instability could not be ignored. With every stomp of feet upon the stone floor, the beams overhead groaned in protest. A sudden hush fell over the table as a loud crack echoed through the hall, the sound sharp and jarring against the joviality that had reigned just moments before. The chandelier swung violently, its crystals clattering against one another, and the sense of foreboding washed over the assembly. Lord Wilhelm, sensing the shift in mood, rose to address his guests once more. "Fear not, dear friends, let us not be dismayed by the sounds of this ancient hall. It is but a testament to our rich heritage." His words, intended to comfort, fell flat as the hall shuddered anew, a deep rumble resonating from the very foundations. The laughter faded, replaced by anxious murmurs. Suddenly, a loud crash resounded from the far corner of the hall, where a heavy stone pillar had given way, sending a cascade of dust and debris across the floor. The revelry turned to chaos as nobles scrambled to their feet, the air thick with panic. In that moment of dread, the unity once celebrated was overshadowed by the very real danger that threatened to collapse upon them. The night, which had begun with such promise, now teetered on the brink of disaster, as the ancient stones of Erfurt bore witness to the folly of unbridled joy amidst the whispers of structural demise. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over Erfurt as the townsfolk gathered for the grand festival. their laughter mingling with the scent of roasted meats and sweet pastries that wafted through the narrow cobbled streets. Brightly colored banners fluttered in the gentle breeze, each one a vibrant testament to the town's prosperity. In the heart of the square, a sturdy wooden platform had been erected, adorned with garlands of flowers and surrounded by a throng of eager spectators, all anticipating the day's festivities. As the appointed hour approached, a sense of excitement rippled through the crowd. Children darted between legs, their joyful shrieks punctuating the air, while merchants hawked their wares, their voices rising above the din. A local troubadour strummed a lute, filling the atmosphere with a lively tune. But beneath the revelry, a whisper of unease threaded through the gathering, unnoticed by most. The platform, a centerpiece of merriment, had been hastily constructed by the town's craftsmen. With scant regard for the quality of materials and the integrity of design, they had thrown together the structure in a fervor to impress. The wood, unseasoned and still green, bore the weight of its own inadequacy, its joints vulnerable to the pressure of the gathering crowd. As the first performers took to the stage, a jester clad in motley leapt into view, his cap bells jingling with each exaggerated movement. Laughter erupted, and the crowd pressed forward, eager for a better view. The platform creaked ominously under the sudden influx of bodies, but the merriment drowned out the warning sounds. With each jest, the jester twisted and turned, executing a series of acrobatic feats that elicited roars of delight. Yet, the structure shuddered with each leap, the wood protesting against the weight. A small crack appeared near one of the central beams, unnoticed amidst the laughter and applause. Then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the jester launched himself into a particularly daring flip. Time slowed as the crowd gasped, eyes wide with anticipation. The sound of splintering wood shattered the mirth like a glass striking stone. With a deafening crack, the platform gave way, a central beam splintering into jagged shards as the entire structure buckled under the weight of the throng. Screams erupted as the crowd surged forward, a wave of bodies tumbling down into the chaos below. The wooden platform collapsed, sending performers and spectators alike crashing into a heap of splintered wood and panicked limbs. Dust and debris filled the air, choking the laughter and turning joy into horror. The cries of the injured pierced the air, a cacophony of despair that echoed through the town square. As the dust settled, the scene was one of utter devastation. Men and women scrambled to help the fallen, their faces pale with shock, hands trembling as they reached for those trapped beneath the wreckage. Among the throng of panicked townsfolk, a few strong arms began to lift the heavy beams, their faces set with grim determination. A festival that had promised laughter and joy had transformed into a scene of tragedy, the floor's fatal weakness revealing not just the fragility of wood, but the vulnerability of dreams woven into the fabric of community. As twilight descended upon Erfurt, the remnants of celebration lay scattered amidst the debris. A stark reminder of the day when pride and haste wove together the threads of misfortune, forever altering the town's history. The hall of the great stone manor, resplendent with banners of crimson and gold, echoed with the laughter and merriment of the nobility gathered beneath its lofty vaulted ceilings. Here, in the heart of Erfurt, the air was thick with the scent of spiced meats roasting over an open fire, and the dulcet tones of lutes and flutes that wove a tapestry of sound amidst the clinking of goblets. Lords and ladies adorned in silks and velvets swirled about like leaves caught in a fevered autumn gust, their revelry a testament to the bounteous harvests and the fortuitous alliance forged that very day. Yet beneath the glimmering surface of joy and celebration, a hidden peril lurked in the shadows of the manor's foundations. The floorboards above the cesspit, an unassuming yet vital part of the building's infrastructure, creaked and groaned under the strain of festivity. With each jubilant stomp and raucous cheer, the weight of the assembled nobles pressed down, creating a symphony of tension that reverberated through the very stones of the edifice. As the merriment continued, a subtle tremor began to weave its way through the hall. The laughter of a young lady, her gown trailing like a river of silk, was punctuated by a sharp crack, a sound that momentarily pierced the joyous din. She paused, her laughter waning as she looked about, her eyes wide with a flicker of unease. Others soon noticed, their heads turning towards the ceiling, where the wooden beams trembled as if caught in the grip of a winter storm. Unbeknownst to the revelers, the cesspit, a necessary yet unglamorous feature of the manor, had not been maintained with the diligence it required. Years of neglect had left its structure compromised, the very walls of the pit eroded by time and the heavy rains of an unforgiving season. Now, beneath the weight of celebration, it strained against the wooden floorboards above, a ticking clock of impending disaster. As the evening wore on, a low rumble, akin to distant thunder, began to echo through the hall. The musicians faltered, their instruments falling silent as the sound grew louder, reverberating through the very marrow of the manor. Panic ignited in the hearts of a few, their eyes darting as they grasped the arms of those nearby, uncertainty creeping into the minds of the revelers. Then, with an ear-splitting crack, the floor above gave way, a horrifying splintering that transformed the jubilant hall into a cacophony of chaos. Nobles stumbled and fell, the weight of their own bodies and the collapsing wood sending them tumbling into the abyss of the cesspit below. Screams pierced the air, a blend of shock and terror that drowned out the remnants of festivities. In an instant, the grandeur of the evening devolved into a scene of horror. The once proud gathering transformed into a frantic scramble, as those who remained upright rushed to aid their fallen compatriots, their fine garments now soiled and torn. The air, once filled with laughter, was now heavy with the acrid stench of fear and despair, mingling grotesquely with the remnants of feasting and revelry. As the dust settled and the last echoes of the calamity subsided, the hall stood in stark silence, a reminder of the fragility of joy, forever altered by the unseen burdens that lay beneath.